because Emily was not on my radar. So Jazzie
Over there.
and Corinne was like, you need to have Emily come out as a guest speaker, and I had never heard of her. And I was like, are you sure? Right?
Absolutely.
Because everyone that we've had thus far, I've tapped them to come as a speaker. And we had one slot open, and they suggested that we bring Emily. So that's why we have her here today. So I said all of that to say, I don't have anybody lined up for 2027. If you have someone that you want to come and speak, that you think is going to do a great job based on what we've done this year, make sure you reach out and let me know, because I got to start lining people up for next year. I got 2 people in mind already, but if you know someone, I'm depending on you to bring it to me and give me the name so we can get that in. All right, so without further ado, we're going to have Emily come up and as our guest speaker. I don't want to waste any time because she has a hard out at 8 o'clock.
Cool.
There you go.
Thank you. So 10 till, we're going to wave you down. You've got 10 minutes, Emily. All right. I am currently a beekeeper in Akron, Ohio. I've been doing this for 13 years, and I love bees. How many of you guys know me on Facebook? So a handful of you. I appreciate you all for coming. I feel very blessed to be able to travel around and talk to other beekeepers and do this for a living. I do this. This is my career. I am full time. I am also a doctoral student, and so I'm getting a degree in integrated health. And on my journey to do this is a lot of research. And in that research, what I have studied is bees. Every single thing that I can relate to bees. So I'm taking like a nutrition class, and I was like, how am I going to relate this nutrition class to bees? I have found ways about pollination and bees and massive amounts of food production and all those things. So my professor and I met last week, and she's like, does everything pertain about bees to you? It absolutely does. I have zero interest in it if it has nothing to do with bees. So with that, the research that I have been able to do, I put together in a presentation because a lot of it pertains to apitherapy. So most of us are kind of like familiar, oh, you take some honey if you have like a sore throat. We've heard that propolis is probably good for us. How many of you know that bee venom therapy is actually can be helpful for the joints? Yeah, exactly. So don't be embarrassed. Like, yeah, I know that. It was the reason that I found out was because other beekeepers told me. So if they didn't open their mouth and tell me about it helping them, I probably never would have looked more into it. So I am going to kind of just touch lightly on a lot of these things. So it's going to be more like an introductory course on this information. And then I tell you at the end where you can continue to learn more about it. Do any of you know about the American Apitherapy Societies? So they do have a web page and a Facebook page and all of the social media pages. They are having a conference in November, and if you've ever wanted to learn more about apitherapy, go look that up and go there. So you will see me. I will be doing one presentation during that weekend. So I'm going to be talking about podmore. Does anyone know what podmore is? Me either. So I did research on it. Podmore is about consuming bees, like dead bees. So that sounds delicious. And then you're going to learn more about like api inhalation and bee venom therapy and all those things. So it's going to be 45 to 60-minute classes on those topics. So I highly recommend, if you have interest in learning more about it, please absolutely come to that and learn more from some very wonderful professional people. Do we have a clicker?
Yeah.
All right, so my presentation is right here. It is Healing from the Hive, the Medicinal Power of Honeybees. Thank you much, I appreciate it. So what is apitherapy? When I first got in and I started hearing that terminology, I thought that apitherapy meant bee venom therapy. So when people would ask me, I was like, oh, apitherapy means they sting you. And actually it was wrong, and I was telling people the wrong information. What it is it's actually an alternative medicine that uses products derived from honeybees for your own health benefits. And some of the recorded uses that we know of, and there is research out, and I do recite a lot of my research if you want to look it up, but there's still over 2,000 articles out there, peer-reviewed research, some of it within the last 5 years, so you know it's more current information, plus reported uses, inflammatory disorders, rheumatoidism, neurological disorders, gastrointestinal disorders, immunotherapy, cancer. Has anybody seen that research article going around Facebook? Like, everybody saw that. I got tagged in that like 150 times. Have you seen this? Yes, I have. Just like 100 other times. Wound healing, hormonal imbalances, boosting the immune system, as well as more. Now, I do want to tell you that this did not just come about because Emily, the nerd beekeeper lady, decided to start talking about it. This predates anybody and everything, okay? So they have been serving as kind of pharmacists of nature for many, many years. Honey was first recorded in wild caves, okay? So long before we ever even knew that we were all going to exist or that Atlanta would be as big as it is, they were using this as a food consumption product, 8,000 to 10,000 BC. Royal jelly was actually used by Cleopatra. So if you've ever heard about how beautiful her skin was and how meticulous she was about her beauty, well, you can thank royal jelly for that. And that is absolutely amazing. So if you've never smeared it on your face, which most of us don't really do that, do it. Do try that at least once. If you've ever wanted your skin to feel like a baby's on all over again, it definitely is amazing and healing to the skin. Now, I will say, don't store it in a metal container. I did that, and it rusted on the inside, and it made it go bad. So be careful what you store it in. I would pick something like glass. Now, pollen was first recorded in the 17th century, only recorded because of the microscope. Was it used before that? Absolutely it was. They were actually giving it to those who passed away in tombs for the afterlife. So they were sent away with pollen. That's why they knew it was actually so good they wanted to give it to those that had passed on. And then bee venom application was first recorded in Egypt around 3000 BC, but Hippocrates actually talked about using it in his writings for arthritis. So the role of the beekeeper, do know that it is important for you that, well, one, first and foremost, I am not a medical practitioner, nor are you, unless you actually are, and therefore I do not want to, or anybody ever, to say I can cure a disease, treat a disease, or heal you from your ailment, okay? So 100% you should always ask your doctor if you are on a medication to see if there are any altercations that you will have with that medication. And if they want to come off of that and start taking something else, always see your doctor. It is really, really important. But caretaker of the hive is us. We are the beekeepers. We need to make sure that we are ethically harvesting our products from our bee hives. So same story with honey. We know that if our bees need to have honey for the month of dearth or the month of winter, we cannot take an overabundance. And that is the same with every single product in the hive. If I take too much propolis, I'm going to reduce their immune system. If I'm taking their royal jelly, then they need to feed that to their larva and their brood cannot expand. So I need to make sure that whatever products I'm taking away from the bees, it is because they have an overabundance and also that they're very healthy. If they are not healthy, I don't want to take anything away from them because they probably need it to help themselves get a little bit better. So I'm going to always prioritize the hive's health over my own selfish desires to take things from the bees, all right? So just making sure that you know, in addition to having a good quality and purity standard. A very good example of this is if you've ever had to use terramycin, they prescribe it for European foulbrood. If you've ever fallen into that hole, unfortunately, I did last year on a couple of my hives. So I was given terramycin, and guess what that means? That means that I can no longer use the propolis or the honey from that hive. Because it's an antibiotic, and the antibiotic is stored inside of the comb and the wax and the propolis, and therefore I will be giving people antibiotics if I were to use that product in whatever it is that I am giving to my clients that are showing up to my house. So I have to mark those boxes as unusable, and I have to make sure that I really do not use them. Typically, if I have to use terramycin, it is an absolute last resort, and I'm probably going to end up throwing the strains away in the end because I just don't want that living in the wax on products that I'm going to be taking away from my bees. However, we do know that sometimes we get to a point where we have to use something, so just make sure whatever it is that you're using in your beehives, you will be able to consume it as a person. If you cannot consume it, then you definitely don't want to make it into a medicine to give to anybody else. So Apitherapy products, what does that include? That includes honey, beeswax, pollen, propolis, royal jelly, apronil. Does anyone know what apronil is? Does This is another class I was thinking about teaching. It is emulsifying drone larva and consuming it. Another delicious thing, okay? Bee venom, api inhalation, as well as vibrational frequencies. Now, I don't get to go over all of these things today, unfortunately, because I do have to keep this within a time limit. So if there is information that you want to know more about, at the end I give you my information. But you can also just get onto Google Scholar and type these words in, and then you can learn more about them. Or you can come to the American Apitherapy Society conference, and you can learn from other professionals there as well. So let's go ahead and start with honey. Did you know the therapeutic properties that is antibacterial, which means that it helps inhibit bacterial growth? It is an anti-inflammatory. It helps reduce inflammation in the body. So consuming it will actually help reduce inflammation. What is a sign of inflammation? Allergies, right? So that's why you're getting some relief from consuming honey. It's an antioxidant, so that means that it's neutralizing free radicals and helps protect cells from oxidative damage. What does that mean? That means that you can have cancer being caused in your body by something, and this is going to help boost your immune system. It has been shown to promote tissue repair, so it supports wound healing, burns, and eczema. And there are different types, which I'll get to on the other slides. A lot of us have heard of Manuka honey. Well, Manuka honey isn't just it, all right? There are actually other medicinal honeys out there. That just happens to be one of them that is the most common, and it was very well marketed. It is anti-proliferative, which means that it may inhibit abnormal cell growth. It also shows in research that it has anti-cancer properties as well as anti-metastatic properties. So that means that it's helping reduce the spread of cancer in the body. The traditional and reported uses, respiratory health. How many of us have drank some tea with honey in it because we know that's going to help our throat or our bronchitis or our respiratory system? Skin and wound healing, so using it, applying it to burns and eczema as well as ulcers. So if you know somebody that has severe eczema, you can just create them a little bit of a honey cream, apply that directly to the eczema, and you will typically see some form of relief. It is also known to be a digestive health assistant, which means it can help relieve constipation, and I'll talk about some other things on the next slide. It also has the ability to be an anti-parasitic. It gives you general wellness because it will help boost your mood. And then also, I have recently been reading that they use it in I do every day, don't you? So it actually supports health very well because this is an antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory. So there was research that it actually was, if you remove the beeswax alcohols off of it, which is T002, I mean, none of us are going to memorize that, you will actually be able to help the body with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So there's some research out there on that. Now, how do you extract it? I don't know. You'll have to figure that part out. And then it also will nourish and protect the skin. So putting it into creams and salves and applying it directly to the skin will help moisturize it because it becomes a protective skin barrier. It may also help with diaper rash, psoriasis, eczema, stretch marks, as well as burns, bruises, and acne. I don't know if any of you ever cloth diapered your children, but you have to be very cautious about the types of diaper rash creams that you use in your diapers, and this is actually a safe one that you will be able to use. So I personally was making my own diaper rash cream so that I could safely use it with my cloth diapers. This means that this product is a very versatile, natural remedy, but do know that you should not consume large chunks of it because it will upset the digestive system. So that means that if you're eating a piece of calm, no big deal, you can chew that and swallow it, but don't be carrying around a 5-pound block of beeswax and chewing it off, hoping that it will help your fatty liver, because it will actually cause you more digestive upset because the body cannot break it down properly. So ways to use it medicinally, because there are over 300 naturally occurring compounds, which includes fatty acids, esters, hydrocarbons, and long-chain alcohols that contribute to its protective, soothing, and moisturizing properties, you can then use it to turn it into topical salves, balms, and creams. So what would you be able to do? What I personally do is I find a cream that everybody is ranting and raving about, and then I look at the ingredients in it, I look at a few different recipes, and I say, what do I have in my cupboard? And I will create something and then add beeswax to it. Sometimes I will even add some propolis to give it some more medicinal properties as well. So just have to look up a recipe online. They are all over the place, but do a little bit of research and find several recipes to create your own recipe. You don't want to actually copy something that somebody else is already selling. But if you combine it with honey and propolis and herbal oils, that means that you're going to help enhance the cream itself, and then the stability of the topical preparation that you are creating, and then it will help deliver these wonderful components directly into the skin. If you're using fresh cut comb, it contains beeswax, honey, pollen, and trace minerals from all parts of the hive. But as I said earlier, just don't be chewing on large chunks of it. So moving on to pollen, how many of you collect pollen? It's not, it takes a lot of effort. When the first year I started collecting pollen, I put a trap on the bottom, and I found out at the end of the year, I have to take the whole giant heavy hive off of that thing and pull it off of there. And that was really annoying to me, so I didn't do pollen for a couple of years after that, and then I found that they had some easy insert front ones. But do know that when you are collecting pollen, you have to be very cautious about not taking too much. The way that I do mine is I only open it 2 days a week for a couple of hours, and then I close it off from different hives. Now I have multiple hives, so I can do this on multiple different locations. But do know that you can take too much, and it will cause your bees to starve and not be able to grow in the brood chamber. But it is a natural mixture of pollen, nectar, enzymes, as well as the bee secretions. So those bee secretions, those enzymes that come directly from the digestive system of the honeybee, are what give it its additional therapeutic benefits. It is highly nutrient-dense superfood. So just to let you know that if you were ever flying over the ocean, just make sure that you bring your little tiny bottle of pollen with you, because if your plane crashes and you are the lone survivor, you will actually be able to consume that pollen and survive off of it for a few days, because it contains all of the nutrients that your body needs in order for it to live. Now, you cannot just live on pollen for a very long period of time. It would never be enough nutrition, but it would get you by until somebody comes and saves you, okay? And then it has antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and antimicrobial properties because it is rich in polyphenols and flavonoids that support cellular health. There was research that showed that it was helping alleviate menopausal symptoms. So a clinical study, they found by using bee pollen for 8 weeks, actually really reduced the menopausal symptoms in different women. And then, why does it give you energy if you've ever noticed? It's because it is full of all of the B vitamins. Now, do know that when I first started doing this presentation, well, the research that I read said that there was very minimal to no amounts of B12. And then, of course, going through different conferences and hearing other people speak, I learned that there actually is research showing that there is a decent amount of B12 in your bee pollen. However, it is not enough to meet the demand that you require for a day. I personally like to consume bee pollen because it's like a multivitamin. However, I just have to be cautious about making sure that I'm still obtaining enough B vitamins to meet my nutritional need. So, if you've ever heard people talk about how they want to consume pollen because of their seasonal allergies, this was a big thing that I sell at markets, or I used to sell at a lot of markets. Now I only sell at one market, I'm too busy. And everyone would want to buy honey for seasonal allergies. But if you don't know, there's less than 1% of pollen in extracted honey. So what I would tell them is that you really actually want the pollen, because the pollen is what's causing your symptoms, and then ingesting it will build up your tolerance, and then you won't be as reactive anymore. That was wrong. That was big time wrong. I didn't know that, okay? So through this presentation that I was putting together in research, I found out that the way that bee pollen actually is helping is that it is regulating the inflammation pathways in the body. It is helping stabilize mast cells, which is reduced by reducing granulation and histamine release. So if you are highly reactive, you typically have a mast cell buildup or a highly reactive antibody IgE type of thing going on. And so by taking pollen, you will help reduce that inflammation in your body. Bee pollen contains bioactive compounds such as flavonoids and polyphenols, which means that it's not only just a nutrient power horse for you, house, not horse, it's going to do things in your body and make you actually feel better. It's working with your system. So these compounds may interrupt immune signaling inside the body and reduce the production of inflammatory mediators. So that's what's actually going on when you are consuming pollen. It is not by forcing it into your body and building up a tolerance, it is suppressing the inflammation pathways. So how can you use it medicinally? Well, you're going to want to start small with 1 to 3 grains. Yes, I really do mean 1, 2, 3 granules, and that is it. If you are very highly reactive to pollens and allergies, you do not want to shove a giant handful of it into your mouth and see what happens. I did see that actually happen at a market one day, and it did not turn out well for the guy. Although he did survive, he was red in the face, itchy, watery eyes, runny nose for quite some time, clearing his throat constantly because he didn't listen to me when I said, I think that you should only do 1 to 3 granules, and he instead threw an entire tablespoon in his mouth as he was saying, I'm really reactive to seasonal allergies. And it didn't turn out so well. So I highly recommend making sure that you are taking a very small dose and then building up to the amount, which would usually be 1 to 2 teaspoons a day. So how would I do this? I would do 1 granule under the tongue, see how you react. If you don't react poorly, which means that you don't get the itchy, watery eyes, runny nose, then you can build up the next time that you take it, the next day, to 3 granules. And eventually you can build up very slowly over a couple of weeks to 1 teaspoon a day, and then perhaps eventually get on to 2 teaspoons a day. You can also use it as a face scrub, whether you knew that or not. It's kind of a little bit exfoliating, but it also helps regenerate the tissue on the face. You can mix in things like almond oil and honey. My daughter really likes to add avocado to hers, and then she looks like Shrek. And then she walks around the house and like growls at people and teases them. But just know that there is a very high allergy reaction. So always test it on your skin first if you think that you're going to be applying it to your face. And then you can see the nutrient composition, the carotenoids, the carbohydrates, the proteins. This is just the breakdown of pollen and how it is so beneficial to the body. All right, so this is one of my favorites, which is propolis. I'm not used to having things on my face, so it's like I keep my hairs getting in my way. But propolis, if you didn't know, it is made from plant resins, beeswax, essential oils, pollen, enzymes, and bee secretions. It is collected from tree buds, bark, sap, and leaves, and the majority of the components of them are from poplar, birch, pine, and conifers. So you can collect this straight off with your beehive through the sides and the frames, or you can use what's called a propolis trap, which is my preference at this point. And the reason that I prefer to use traps is because I don't really want to have the small little wood pieces or paint chips in there. But do know that if you do consume propolis, you've got smashed bees in it, unfortunately. So as a beekeeper, we know that bees kind of don't always get out of the way, and your bee venom can be in the propolis. So don't encourage people who are highly reactive to bee venom to consume propolis products. But it is full of flavonoids, phenolic esters and esters, aromatic acids and aldehydes, terpenes, amino acids, vitamins, and minerals. It prevents disease and infection in the beehive. So that means that it would probably have very similar attributes for our own body. They use it to regulate temperature by sealing off gaps and maintaining humidity. So that is why it's really difficult to break those boxes apart. We're using that propolis to seal all those boxes together and make your life very difficult. I don't know if you are anything like me, but I have propolis on everything in my life at this point. And it's on my phone, it's on my car, it's everywhere. Every single thing that I touch has propolis. So do know that whatever you use it with or in, it will likely be stained in some form or manner from propolis. So just to let you know. I don't know if you're one of those people who go out to the beehive, you scrape off this giant ball, and you're so excited, so you put it in your pocket, and there's a Georgia bee, woohoo, that'll be fun to get that out. But they use it to protect and strengthen the hive, and they make it airtight as well as waterproof, and like I said, stabilizing the hive. Now, what are the medicinal benefits of propolis? It is an antifungal, antibacterial, which means that in this study that I am mentioning here, they show the ability for it to inhibit bacterial growth of staph infections and E. coli. Okay? Now these are in vitro. This is in a petri dish. So this is not directly applied to people. They took propolis and then they applied it to staph infections and E. coli, and it did show the ability to shut those viruses and bacteria down. It is an antiviral, and this research study showed that it inhibited viruses like HSV1 and HSV2, that is the herpes simplex virus. So you can take propolis and apply it directly to those symptoms that you have, and it will help reduce or lessen the severity of it. And then they also used it in SARS-CoV-2, which is actually an animal version, and is not the one that ruined all of our lives in 2020. So just know that this is very, very helpful as an antiviral in the studies that we are able to access. It has anti-inflammatory properties, which means that it's reducing inflammation markers in the body. You can use it to support wounds, burns, as well as skin conditions. I took a class before, or I guess it was a presentation that I saw a lady in southern Ohio, and all she works with is propolis, and she showed some horrific looking wounds that were not healing with regular antibiotics or creams that were given from the pharmaceutical company. So she started applying propolis, or these people did, and it was amazing. Within 2 to 4 weeks, it was almost completely healed over with just a little bit of scarring afterwards. It shows that it has antioxidant benefits by neutralizing free radicals and boosting antioxidant enzymes, which means that it helps protect the body from oxidative stress. So the therapeutic benefits of propolis. This is like my favorite thing. I love propolis. I also love bee venom now too. The propolis is one of my absolute top because you can't always talk everybody into bee venom. They're like, oh, just come on, let's go get some. You know, some people are gonna, a lot of people are probably gonna say that. But you can usually convince them to take propolis. So it has immune boosting benefits, which means that it stimulates the immune response and increases macrophage activity as well as antibody production. And I do cite the research that I took this information from, just in case you want to look it up yourself. It has cardiometabolic benefits. Now, actually it's the president of the AAS, the American Apitherapy Society, is a cardiologist, and he does bee venom therapy. So that's pretty cool to me. When I found that out, I was like, you're the coolest person that I know. Absolutely. So like, you're a doctor and you use this on your patients? Absolutely. Now, I'm not talking about bee venom. I'm talking about propolis here. But if you are consuming it, you may lower your LDL cholesterol, triglycerides, and blood sugar. You may also show that it will improve your HDL cholesterol and insulin sensitivity. And then after I did this presentation at a conference, somebody raised their hand and they, of course, asked a question I didn't have an answer to, which I absolutely hate. So I'm kind of glad that I'm leaving right out the door. Nobody can ask me anything. Was it true? I don't know. We'll never know. All right. But somebody had said, what about your A1C? And I had no answer. So I went home and I did some research, and I found a study that they had men take propolis capsules for 90 days, and it absolutely 100% did lower their A1C levels. That's amazing to me, okay? I think that is absolutely fantastic. This is a product in your own backyard. It is free to you. You can just consume it. It doesn't have to be a capsule. You can just take little tiny pieces of it and swallow it whole. Don't chew it, okay? If you chew it, I mean, you can, but if you chew it, it may stick to your teeth. And then you might be like Emily, who one day thought it was really cool to put a piece on her tooth because it was hurting, and then I went to the Dollar General, all right? And it looked like Emily had yellow teeth, and it just wasn't so funny at that when I got in the car and I realized that. So, but it also has very, very wonderful wound and skin health benefits. It speeds up tissue repair, and it helps heal the skin from the inside out if you apply it to cuts, burns, and acne. Now, this is my absolute favorite part, the oral health benefits. And why is this my favorite part? Because this has worked for my family to an extent that I'm just like amazed. Every time it works, I'm like, man, that stuff is cool. So if you have a toothache, you can just go onto your beehive, take a piece of it, and stick it on your tooth. And I guarantee you, within 15 minutes, that pain will lessen, okay? Or you can create a remineralizing paste, which you just take something like bentonite clay. I think I gave you a recipe on the other page. Aloe vera powder, calcium carbonate, and then you mix it with some powdered propolis and you put that on your teeth. It will actually stop the growth of cavities. So I saw this happen in my own child. The whole reason that I created a remineralizing toothpaste was because I had a child that had an issue and his teeth were very severely decayed due to a scan that I had when I was pregnant, okay? And the surgeon wanted to have his teeth removed about 2 years of age. And I said, I'm not comfortable putting my child under it. And so I did all this research and I found out that propolis is supposed to be healing. And I'm like, I got that in the backyard. So I put all these ingredients together and I started putting it on his teeth every single night. And we did not have to have the surgery until he was 4.5 years old. And I 100% know that it was because of that propolis paste. I'm to the point now that I have actually made it in every form possible for every single thing that my children come across, for any issues, for any wounds. If you just take some propolis and powder it down, I use a coffee grinder, and you put it in some MCT oil, so I'm using organic coconut MCT oil. You allow it to infuse for 4 to 6 weeks. Has anybody ever heard of oil pulling? So you're using coconut oil to help remineralize your teeth, strengthen your teeth. Well, now you've added propolis to it. Propolis will actually shut down strep, and strep is the cause of cavities in the mouth. And so now you are applying the antimicrobial, antifungal, antibacterial properties of the coconut with propolis in it to your teeth. If you have sensitive teeth, it will be about 2 weeks and you will no longer have sensitive teeth anymore. So I'll get off my shoebox here, but it is amazing stuff. So how can you use it medicinally? You can take it internally, and I just tell people all the time, just take a little piece of it. I'm currently reading on some research about green propolis and the anti-cancer benefits that it has. The research that I'm reading is so amazing, I actually gave it to my best friend's dad because he just found out that he has cancer. And I said, you have to take this. You can take it in conjunction with all the other things that they're going to give you. Just make sure that you offset the time. You don't want to take something early and, in the morning and then that right after. I don't know if anyone's familiar with activated charcoal, but it may have the potential like that where it's going to soak up and absorb or break down, whatever it is. So I just highly recommend, if you are sick or sick on a regular basis, consuming propolis to help boost your immune system. So you can grind it for consumption and add it to your yogurt or your smoothies. You can make a tincture, you can make elixirs. I make elderberry syrup, and I love elderberry syrup, and I'll add some powdered propolis into my elderberry syrup, and I shake it up before I give doses to myself and my kids. You can take the powdered propolis and put it into gelatin capsules, or you can even just add the powder directly into your honey. You can also make an infusion with it, with either an alcohol, an oil, or a glycerin base. I have a whole class on that if you're ever interested. And you can create these products and make it into a tincture, and then add that tincture into whatever it is that you are making. Now, do know that most of these products I'm talking about right now have to be made in a commercial kitchen. So if you don't have access to a commercial kitchen, you will have to get licensed to make these products, but I promise you it is well worth it. You can also use it topically in the oil, so I'm using coconut, organic coconut MCT oil. You allow it to infuse for 4 to 6 weeks. Has anybody ever heard of oil pulling? So you're using coconut oil to help remineralize your teeth, strengthen your teeth. Well, now you've added propolis to it. Propolis will actually shut down strep, and strep is the cause of cavities in the mouth. And so now you are applying the antimicrobial, antifungal, antibacterial properties of the coconut with the propolis in it to your teeth. If you have sensitive teeth, it will be about 2 weeks and you will no longer have sensitive teeth anymore. So I'll get off my shoebox here, but it is amazing stuff. So how can you use it medicinally? You can take it internally, and I just tell people all the time, just take a little piece of it. I'm currently reading on some research about green propolis and the anti-cancer benefits that it has. The research that I'm reading is so amazing, I actually gave it to my best friend's dad because he just found out that he has cancer. And I said, you have to take this. You can take it in conjunction with all the other things that they're going to give you. Just make sure that you offset the time. You don't want to take something early, in the morning and then that right after. I don't know if anyone's familiar with activated charcoal, but it may have potential like that where it's going to soak up and absorb or break down, whatever it is. So I just highly recommend, if you are sick or sick on a regular basis, consuming propolis to help boost your immune system. So you can grind it for consumption and add it to your yogurt or your smoothies. You can make a tincture, you can make elixirs. I make elderberry syrup, and I love elderberry syrup, and I'll add some powdered propolis into my elderberry syrup, and I shake it up before I give doses to myself and my kids. You can take the powdered propolis and put it into gelatin capsules, or you can even just add the powder directly into your honey. You can also make an infusion with it, with either an alcohol, an oil, or a glycerin base. I have a whole class on that if you're ever interested. And you can create these products and make it into a tincture, and then add that tincture into whatever it is that you are making. Now, do know that most of these products I'm talking about right now have to be made in a commercial kitchen. So if you don't have access to a commercial kitchen, you will have to get licensed to make these products, but I promise you it is well worth it. You can also use it topically into paste or creams as well as soaps and apply it directly to your skin for soothing and support. As well as for your teeth, you can chew it as a gum, you can make it into a throat spray, you can use it as a mouthwash. A few years back, I got very, very sick, almost died sick. And my entire everything inside of my body broke out into ulcers to the point that I couldn't eat anything for 14 days. It was horrible, but I lost a lot of weight. It was kind of great. But with that, the mouth sores were horrible. That I had gotten the mouthwash that they use for cancer patients. It was absolutely pain, severe pain. The only thing that helped was putting the propolis and the MCT oil on the inside of my mouth. It was very, very very helpful and relieving. I'm not saying that's the only thing that you should use, and you should definitely always ask your doctor first, but for me, in my situation, it was so relieving that that's what I continued to use until they went away. Other uses, balms, salves, as well as lotions. If you are in problems with poison ivy, I have poison ivy like 90% of the year because of where my beehives are, and so you can make a soap and add propolis to it with jewelweed or any calendula, any other products that help with poison ivy itching or eczema, and then add some propolis right there into it. How many of you have consumed royal jelly before? Not many. Yeah, that's because it's gross. So royal jelly is my least favorite product out of the beehive. I do not care for it. However, it is a protein. The protein is prolactin, which means that it transforms a larva into a queen honeybee. It means that she grows into a larger body size, she develops ovaries, she hits sexual maturity, and has a longer lifespan. They also feed it to the new larva for the first 3 days. Did you know that it's secreted from a gland on the head? So when I first started beekeeping, I came down to Mississippi to do some training under Yappy the Bee Man and JP the Bee Man. I don't know if you guys are familiar. But so we did for 2 years in a row. We came down to learn about how to do cutouts. And they scooped it out of a little cup and they had everybody try it. And I was like, that's horrible. And he's like, yeah, and they make it on the top of their head. I was like, why would you do that to me? It is not my favorite thing. Maybe some people do like it. It is just not something that is in my book. I am not a big fan of it. However, the medicinal benefits of it make it worthwhile. It is composed of water, proteins, lipids, fatty acids, minerals, trace elements, vitamins, and enzymes, which means that it becomes a nutrient powerhouse, not a horse this time. It is biologically active, which means that it's interacting with the living organisms, which is us. Rather than supplying just nutrition, it is influencing how our cells behave. It has key bioactives, which is major royal jelly proteins, prolactin and acetylcholine. This supports our immune system, hormones, and cellular health. It promotes energy as well as regeneration. It shows in vitro studies, it has anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory, and antioxidant properties. In research studies, it was showing that it was increasing testosterone levels for men as well as balancing their glucose levels. And then for women, it will help with PCOS symptoms. And then in a study for the pituitary function, they were showing it was benefiting in rats as well as giving menopausal relief. So when I say that it interacts biologically, it's helping your hormones. They use it in other countries, Romania, and I'm just not going to name a bunch of other ones because I don't actually know. But other countries, they use it, and they use it for women who are trying to get pregnant because it will help balance out your symptoms, out your hormones, as well as symptoms of PCOS. How do you consume it? Fresh, straight out of the beehive. That is the best. That is the way that you're going to get the most nutrients. You are not altering it. You are not freezing it. You are not doing anything else. If you want it in its strongest form, that is how you're going to consume it, is fresh. You can make it into capsules and store it in your fridge or your freezer. You could also use a freeze dryer and powder it, but do know that when you are altering it, you are changing its strength of what it can do. So fresh is always best, but you can then also add it into liquid. Since I don't like the taste, I think that sounds like a bad idea, but they recommend this, that you can add it into a liquid. So maybe put it in a juice that will cover up the taste, maybe something like orange juice, and then you can drink it instead. But I'd rather just gulp it down as fast as I can and get it over with. All right, so my favorite, which is what I did my master's thesis in, is bee venom. And my study was in relation to Lyme disease bacteria. And what I studied was how bee venom, molitin in particular, which is a peptide in the enzymes to phospholipase A2, and it will have the ability to break down biofilms and bacteria. Well, what disease is made out of biofilms and bacteria? Lyme disease. The second very awesome part of this is that the antibiotics that they give you for Lyme disease, yes, they can help. However, they go straight for one specific type of bacteria only, whereas bee venom does not have that rule. It can go to any bacteria and virus in the body, and it creates holes in the cells, and it makes them burst and break down. So pretty cool stuff. It is composed of 88% water. The dry ingredients are peptides and enzymes. The one that makes you say, ouch, is molybdenum. It is 40 to 60% of its weight, and that's what triggers inflammation in the body. The allergen enzyme, which is what causes someone to go anaphylactic, we don't really like this one, phospholipase A2, which is 10 to 12% of its weight. This triggers IgE, which are antibodies, and causes a hypersensitivity reaction to you if you are going to have a poor response. Apomid, which is one that I'm currently studying and reading papers on, is a peptide that affects nerve signaling. Well, where are nerves in the body? A lot of them are located obviously everywhere but the brain. And if there's scar tissue on those nerves, you can have things like migraines. And I have a new client that's coming to me because he had a tumor in his brain. They cut it out, and he's left with some scar tissue, which is causing him severe migraines on a daily basis. And so we are now giving him bee venom to help break down that scar tissue. And apomid itself crosses the blood-brain barrier, which means that it can go directly into the nerves of the brain. What else could benefit from this? Multiple sclerosis. I have a guy who I've been seeing for the last 5 months, and he is the reason that I want to continue stinging every person who ever asks me to, because it is seriously nothing less than a miracle what this guy has come from. He tried to walk up my front steps of my house. He could not do it. He needed assistance from me and his wife to do so. He uses a walker on a regular basis to move anywhere, and he uses those carts in the grocery store to be able to go different places. Well, I've been stinging him 3 days a week since May, and he just texted me earlier today and he said, hey, I cut a tree down, haven't used my chainsaw in 7 years. I've been out here for 7 hours. Do you think it's working? Yeah, I think it's working. He has lost his cane, has no idea where that's even at. And then another side effect, which we never anticipated or saw coming, about a month and a half ago, he goes, you know, I didn't want to say anything, but I think that my eyesight is improving. And I was like, really? He ended up having such a change in his eyesight, he went to the eye doctor and they reduced his prescription, okay? It's amazing. It is absolutely amazing stuff, and I'm seeing this happen in multiple people, not just this one guy, but boy, I love this man. He's been in my house every day, like 3 days a week for the last 5 months, and it's fantastic, and it just is amazing to see someone who is debilitated, unable to walk or move or do anything, then text me a month later and say, hey, I'm taking a toilet out of my rental property, and shows me a picture of him tearing it out. Like, that's really cool stuff. So there's also adolapin, which is a peptide with anti-inflammatory and pain-relieving properties. So this is what is beneficial in research to help with Parkinson's, liver scar tissue, as well as cholesterol or fats in the arteries. Now, I do want to say, are we at 10 minutes? Okay. I do want to say that do not just start going and stinging yourself, okay? It's not for everybody, and if you are on medication, it can interact. If you are taking a blood thinner, it is not a good idea because bee venom thins the blood, okay? So this is something that you will want to ask your doctor about. Your doctor will probably think that you're crazy, and then you say, hey, there's studies about it. Could you read them to find out? Beta blockers, if you're taking beta blockers, it will reduce the way that you are reacting. So if you are having an allergic reaction, but you're on a beta blocker, you may not know you are having a severe reaction because of those beta blockers. It is always a very good thing to have a EpiPen on hand if you are going to do any type of bee venom on yourself or anybody else. So it's biogenic amines, which are histamine and dopamine, act as chemical messengers that contribute to the pain and inflammation, but that is what then goes in and reduces inflammation in the body. The medicinal impact is it's an anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, antibacterial, as well as an antifungal, and antiviral, antimicrobial, and anti-cancer. It is an anti-everything, right? It has radioprotective and neurodegenerate aid, as well as CNS inhibiting properties. And I personally like to do direct stings to the body, but there is also acupuncture, which is like acupuncture, but you're dipping the needle into the venom. This is practiced more in, I believe, China and Russia, more so than it is here. And then you can also make topical creams. So if you are afraid to get, bee venom directly applied to you, you can buy creams. There are different ones out there. I would highly recommend buying it from an apitherapist instead of just something from Amazon. Even if it has good reviews, I would want to know where the source is coming from, or that somebody else is actually using it on their clients before I just bought something random. Do know that when you put it in something like a topical cream, it will not have the same effect and it will not have the same potency. But known uses: rheumatoid arthritis, microbial infections, MS, cancer, liver fibrosis, Lyme disease, Parkinson's disease, inflammation disorders, osteoarthritis, nerve pain, tendinitis, hay fever, gout, but your husband doesn't like you to sting his toe when he has it, shingles, burns, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, as well as autoimmune issues. All right, and then real lightly I'm going to touch on api inhalation. If you aren't familiar, it is breathing in the aerosols of the bee hive, which means that you're going to breathe in the propolis, the royal jelly, all those things, because you are putting a device on the bee hive that is allowing it to go through your respiratory system. Well, if you haven't read the article that went around, they say that beekeepers actually live the longest of any other profession, and this is probably why. Because every time you're opening up your beehive, you are giving yourself medicinal benefits. I carry around boxes in my trunk throughout the year because I'm going to catch swarms and stuff, and my kids always know when beekeeping season begins because they can smell it in the car. So I tell them we're giving back the benefits of the propolis, okay, you guys? It doesn't stink, it smells good, and the wax, but it gives you respiratory relief. There's research showing that you can use it for COPD, so if you know somebody, this is not actually using anything that would hurt you, like bee venom. So if you know somebody who's struggling, having breathing issues, asthma, that kind of stuff, you can buy these cute little contraptions to put on your beehive and then allow them to breathe it. Now they also make a machine which will be similar to a diffuser, and you just put propolis in it, and it will diffuse the space of your air. You can put it in your car, in your hotel room. They did a study of putting it in classrooms, and kids missed less days of school from sickness because of having, or so they say, because of the propolis being diffused through the air. So there are ways to get the benefits of it without having to do other things that you don't feel comfortable. But it also shows stress reduction and improved sleep results. So where can you learn more? Well, the American Apitherapy Society, I am a board member now. I absolutely feel like that's a dream come true. I am so thankful that I get to be a part of such an amazing network of people who believe and think and do the same things that I do. You can also find private programs with current BBT practitioners. I heard that there is somebody within a 4-hour radius from here that some people are familiar with, and I think that's really awesome because they are few and far between. You also have online social media groups like Lyme and BVT, Lyme and Bee Venom therapy groups, things like that. So you can Google this information and you will typically find them. In those groups, they usually have a protocol and they will tell you how to and why to sting and all the things that you need to have on hand. And then there are lots of books. I brought some, but I couldn't bring them in because I didn't want to hold myself up when I was leaving. But these are a few that I currently have on hand. The Pat Wagner book is very difficult to find. It is a very easy read and is based on multiple sclerosis, but it's called How Well Are You Willing to Be? There is also the Joseph Brodman book, Bee Venom Therapy, and then the Bible of Bee Venom Therapy by Bodog Beck, which is actually a very old book and an old apitherapist, but his book is still in publication. Health and the Honeybee by Charles Mraz. So the conference that is in Vermont that I'm talking about is the CMAP. It's the Charles Mraz Apitherapy Association Conference. And because Charles Mraz was like the doctor of bees, pretty much. He used bees to treat just about anything and everything that you possibly could. So his book is a very short read, as well as the Bee Venom Therapy book by Frank Schmidt. So if you don't know who I am, I would greatly appreciate you to find me on social media. I am on everything. I really post on Facebook for the most part, and then they get pushed out to TikTok and all that through a program. Is this me? Yes, it is. I was 7 months pregnant in that picture. This is a bee belly, is what I decided to do. And that picture went viral. I woke up the next day and there was over 1 million shares, and I never saw that coming. And then the news was chasing me down, and it's been 9 years. This year since that, and nobody has any idea who I am ever again now. So, but this is my website. There's nothing cool and fantastic on there unless you want to order something, and everything's kind of shut down because I'm traveling a lot. So, and then I'm going to Lithopolis to do a bee beard. So if you want to see a live bee beard, and then the weekend after that, I'm doing another one for the West Virginia Beekeepers Fair, which is really, really cool. I think you guys had Tuck a Bee up here not too long ago. She's coming there, so if you want to see her again, come up to West Virginia. It's really, really pretty up there. So if you have any questions about anything that I talked about, anything else that you want to know, ask somebody else. No, I'm just joking. You're more than welcome to send me an email. If I don't respond within 24 hours, follow up, because you probably got bumped to the second page. I get a lot of stuff, and especially if I ship out orders, it gives me 3 emails per order. So, but I'm not rude, I promise you. I usually do respond to everybody that reaches out to me. So, does anybody have any questions? Because I think I have like 5 seconds. 3 minutes? All right. Anybody?
So what's your favorite uses for the propolis? You like to put in a coffee grinder and turn it into a powder, and then that's how you like to...
Correct. The best way, the way that I like to work with propolis is I put a trap on my hive, I put it in my freezer until it's really cold, and then I take that trap out and it becomes very pliable over a cookie sheet. It falls into little tiny pieces on the cookie sheet, and then I put it in a bucket. I skip the part that I wash it, so I do. I do put it into some water, and then I lay it out so that it can air dry, and then I put it in a bucket. Because I want to get some of the debris off of there. Now, there's not a lot in the traps where you're kind of scraping it off the boxes. You're going to get wood bits and things like that. So just try to make sure that you're pulling all that kind of stuff out of there. But then I take it, put it in a coffee grinder. I have to buy a coffee grinder about every 4 to 6 months because that propolis gets really, really thick and heavy and usually makes the butt stick on. And then I will put it into anything and everything from there. I can store it in a mason jar as a powdered form and then use it for anything that I want to after that point. A quick way to make propolis mouthwash. Not one off the top of my head. I prefer to just infuse MCT oil and then swoosh with the MCT oil. But that is something that's on my radar. And then Propolia, which is a company out of France, they make a mouthwash. So if you want to look up some ingredients, then you would be able to make it. I don't like alcohol-based anything because it burns my mouth. And so I don't use that, but that might be one of the things because I think a lot of mouthwashes are like that. What's your question?
Yes. Do you know if any of the bee products have ever been given to animals for medicinal purposes?
Absolutely. Have they been given to animals? 100%. There is a whole program on bee venom therapy for animals and reducing arthritis in dogs with the leg dysplasia type of issues and stuff. But yeah, I only have so much time. But yes, 100%. People buy pollen from me all the time for it seems to be boxers. I don't know why. But boxers seem to, do they have like a seasonal allergy issue?
Yes.
But, okay.
Yes.
And then using propolis internally for dogs that have severe itching, the itchy skin. So if you can take a tincture and use it for dogs, just make sure that whatever the base is safe for dogs. So I appreciate you guys all. It is 8 o'clock, so I have to literally fly. But thank you so much.